I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, pouring my heart out about the biggest betrayal I've ever experienced. My name is Jake, and I was married to Kelly for 5 years. On the surface, we had a great life together. We lived in a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, both had decent jobs, and even had plans of starting a family someday. But like all good things, it seemed too good to last. In the months leading up to the discovery, I started noticing changes in Kelly's behavior. Little things at first. She'd come home late from work more often, claiming she had to help with an important project. Her phone usage increased and she became more secretive about it. I brushed it off as her being busy or stressed. I mean, we all go through phases, right? But there was something else, a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. Then came the day I stumbled upon the truth. I had come home early from work, excited to surprise her with dinner. Instead, I found her car parked in the driveway, but the house was eerily quiet. I walked in, expecting to see her working in the kitchen, but the living room was empty. That's when I noticed her phone lying on the coffee table. The screen lit up, revealing a series of messages that made my blood run cold. The messages were from our chauffeur, a guy named Tim who had been driving us around for the last year. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. The texts were flirty, intimate, and downright scandalous. I couldn't believe my wife was cheating on me with our chauffeur, no less. My heart raced as I read the messages, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I had trusted Kelly, and she betrayed that trust in the most humiliating way possible. I should have confronted her right then and there, but part of me wanted to gather more evidence. I couldn't let her spin a story that made me look like a fool. So I waited. I watched her walk through the door that night, acting like everything was normal. She greeted me with a kiss, and I had to fight the urge to pull away in disgust. I played it cool, asking her about her day, all the while my mind was racing with what I now knew. The confrontation came a few days later. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The anger and betrayal consumed me, and I needed answers. When I confronted her, I tossed her phone onto the table and laid everything out for her, the messages, the flirty exchanges, everything. Her reaction was infuriating. Instead of owning up to her mistakes, she had the audacity to laugh, claiming I was overreacting and that I must have misunderstood the context. She called Tim just a friend and insisted it was all innocent fun. I could hardly believe my ears. As the conversation escalated, she became defensive, accusing me of being paranoid and controlling. It was like she was gaslighting me, turning my pain into a reflection of my faults. I felt my anger boil over and I yelled back, telling her how betrayed I felt. But deep down, I was also hurt and confused. How could the woman I loved so deeply betray me like this? The emotional impact was overwhelming. I went from shock to rage, then sadness. It felt like I was spiraling, losing control over my own life. After the confrontation, I spent countless nights lying awake, replaying every moment in my mind. I felt lost. I didn't recognize the person I had become. My heart felt heavy with disappointment and betrayal. The woman I had built my life with seemed like a stranger, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a nightmare. I needed to make a decision about how to move forward. Would I try to fix our marriage, or was it time to take a stand and reclaim my life? The days following the confrontation felt like a blur. I was in a constant state of turmoil, oscillating between anger and deep sorrow. I knew I had to make a decision, but the weight of that decision felt overwhelming. I spent hours thinking about the life we had built together and the dreams we once shared. It felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. I tried to talk to some friends about what had happened, but it felt like my words didn't fully convey the depth of my pain. They offered their sympathy and advice, suggesting that I should consider therapy or even separation. At first, I resisted the idea of separating. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could work things out. After all, I still loved her despite everything. But every time I thought of her with Tim, my stomach twisted with rage. The thought of her being intimate with another man, someone who was supposed to serve us, became unbearable. As the days turned into weeks, I began to notice how Kelly's demeanor changed around me. She was no longer the woman I fell in love with. Instead, she was defensive and cold, constantly trying to justify her actions. It was clear to me that she had no intention of taking responsibility for her infidelity. With every conversation we had, it became apparent that she was more concerned about maintaining her image than making amends. One night, after a particularly heated argument where she kept insisting that I was being unreasonable, I snapped. I told her that I couldn't do this anymore. The pain of living with her dishonesty was gnawing at me, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I told her I needed space to think, to really assess what I wanted for my future. With that, I moved into the guest bedroom, doing my best to put physical distance between us. The first few nights in the guest bedroom were agonizing. I lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of our life together. I thought about all the times I had defended her to others, how I had invested so much emotion and trust into our marriage, only to have it shattered. I felt like a fool, and every time I closed my eyes, I could see her with Tim, laughing and being intimate in the very place I had once thought was our sanctuary. During this time, I started to reevaluate everything about our relationship. I reflected on how our life had become routine and mundane. Had I missed the signs of her dissatisfaction? Had I taken her for granted? I spent time journaling my thoughts, trying to untangle the mess of emotions that swirled within me. The anger, betrayal, and hurt were palpable, but I also began to feel something else, an ember of strength igniting in my chest. One evening, while sitting in the guest bedroom, I made a decision. I would not be a victim in this situation. I had spent too much time worrying about her feelings and not enough time focusing on my own. I realized that I needed to take control of my life again. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I decided to take a step that would not only empower me but also send a clear message to Kelly. I started to plan my revenge, not in a malicious way, but in a way that would help restore my sense of self-worth. I had always dreamed of owning a luxury car, something that represented success and independence. Kelly had always scoffed at my desire for such a vehicle, insisting it was a waste of money. But now, I saw it as a symbol of my newfound freedom. I began researching cars, looking at financing options, and even started to save money. Each time I thought about driving away in my own luxury car, it filled me with a sense of purpose. I was going to buy the car I wanted, and I was going to do it for me. As I moved forward with my plans, I felt a renewed sense of resolve. I was determined to take control of my narrative. No longer would I be the man who had been betrayed and broken. Instead, I was going to rise from the ashes of this painful experience. It was time for me to reclaim my happiness, and I knew that this was just the beginning. I couldn't wait to see Kelly's reaction when she realized that I was moving on, that I was not the same man she had once known. The tides were turning, and I was ready to take charge of my life. With my plan in motion, I plunged into the world of luxury cars like a man possessed. I consumed every article and video review I could find, immersing myself in the mechanics, styles, and prices of various models. I had my eye on a sleek black Audi, a car that exuded sophistication and power. It felt like a fairy tale in the making. I imagined myself behind the wheel, feeling the engine purr, the wind in my hair as I drove away from the mess that had become my life. During this time, Kelly remained oblivious to my growing independence. She was too wrapped up in her own drama, continuing to justify her actions and insisting that I was the problem. It was bizarre to witness her shift from being my partner to someone who only cared about preserving her own narrative. She would often attempt to bring up our issues, trying to paint me as the villain who had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. But I was no longer interested in her excuses. I had made my decision, and nothing was going to deter me from following through. One evening, as I was researching financing options, Kelly burst into the room. She had gotten wind of my growing distance and, in a fit of panic, demanded to know what was going on. I could see the fear in her eyes. She sensed that the ground beneath her was shifting. She attempted to play the victim once again, claiming that I was being unfair and unreasonable. But this time, I wasn't going to fall for it. I took a deep breath and calmly told her that I was planning to buy a new car. At first she laughed nervously, I could tell. "You're kidding, right? You can't just throw money around like that," she exclaimed, trying to belittle my choice. But I stood my ground, explaining how important it was for me to have something that was mine, a measure of my independence and self-worth. Her laughter faded as she realized I was serious, and in that moment I could see the tide turning. Without missing a beat, she switched tactics, trying to manipulate me again. "You really think a car is going to solve our problems?" she asked, raising her voice. "You're just running away from the issues we need to fix together." I felt a surge of anger at her blatant denial, but I kept my composure. I told her that I was no longer interested in fixing things with her. I wasn't the one who had broken the trust between us. The desperation in her eyes was unmistakable as I added, "You made your choice, Kelly. Now I'm making mine." The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. For the first time, I could see her unraveling. The woman who had been so confident in her denials and excuses now looked vulnerable and lost. She began to plead with me, claiming that we could start fresh, that she would cut ties with Tim if it meant saving our marriage. I could see the tears in her eyes, but my heart had hardened. The betrayal was too raw and too deep. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into believing that her remorse was genuine. That night, I went online and finalized the purchase of my Audi. It felt liberating to click the confirm purchase button, and as I did, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift. I had taken my power back, and it felt incredible. The car would be ready for pickup in a matter of days, and I couldn't wait to drive it off the lot, leaving the remnants of my old life behind. When the day finally arrived, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning. I arrived at the dealership early, my heart racing with anticipation. The moment I laid eyes on the Audi, I knew I had made the right choice. It was everything I had dreamed of, a perfect blend of elegance and strength. As I got behind the wheel, I felt a rush of excitement wash over me, a feeling of liberation that I hadn't felt in a long time. When I finally drove it home, the look on Kelly's face was priceless. She stood in the driveway, mouth agape, disbelief written all over her face. I stepped out of the car, feeling like a king, and as I walked toward her, I could see the panic meld with envy in her eyes. She stammered, "You really bought it?" I simply nodded, a smirk creeping onto my face. "It's mine, Kelly, all mine." Her reaction was a mix of anger and desperation, and I felt a sense of satisfaction bubbling within me. She tried to regain control of the conversation, accusing me of being selfish and reckless, but I was unfazed. I told her that I was done with her attempts to manipulate me. I was moving on, and no amount of guilt-tripping would change that. From that moment on, it was clear that the dynamic between us had shifted. I was no longer the man who would allow himself to be steamrolled by her lies and manipulations. I had taken a stand, and I was determined to embrace my new life, one where I could find strength and happiness on my own terms. I could feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders as I settled into this new chapter, ready to reclaim my life, my joy, and my independence. After I got the Audi, everything changed. It was as if I had flipped a switch, and the light that had been so dim in my life suddenly began to shine. The car symbolized my newfound freedom, but it also marked a significant transformation in my relationship with Kelly. She was no longer the center of my universe, and it felt incredibly liberating. In the days that followed, I soaked up every moment with my new car. I took long drives, blasting my favorite music and relishing the feeling of the wind in my hair. I felt like a new man, one who had shed the layers of betrayal and hurt that had weighed me down for far too long. Each time I got behind the wheel, the smell of the leather and the hum of the engine reminded me that I was reclaiming my life, and I was no longer defined by someone else's infidelity. Kelly, on the other hand, seemed to spiral further into her own discontent. She watched as I embraced this new phase of my life with enthusiasm, and I could see the jealousy simmering beneath the surface. No longer was she the one calling the shots, and it infuriated her. She tried to put on a brave face, acting like she was unaffected by my choices, but I could see the cracks forming in her facade. One evening, she approached me in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. "You really think that car is going to fill the void in your life?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "It won't solve anything." I turned to her, meeting her gaze head-on. "It's not about filling a void, Kelly. It's about taking control of my life again. I'm not sitting here waiting for your validation anymore." Her expression shifted from anger to desperation, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She couldn't handle the fact that I was moving on without her, and it was eating her alive. As she attempted to respond, I could see her words faltering. "You're acting like this is some kind of competition," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I didn't want things to go this way." "But they did, didn't they?" I shot back. "You made your choices, and now I'm making mine." That conversation marked a turning point for both of us. I could sense that Kelly was struggling to cope with the reality of our situation. She had always been confident in her ability to charm her way out of anything, but this time, the tables had turned and it left her feeling vulnerable. It was both fascinating and painful to witness. As the weeks passed, I continued to focus on myself. I began hitting the gym regularly, not just to sculpt my body but to clear my mind. With every drop of sweat, I felt the remnants of my old life wash away. I started forging new friendships and reconnecting with old ones. I realized how much I had isolated myself during our marriage, and now I was determined to expand my social circle and live life fully. But even as I flourished, Kelly remained a constant presence in my life. She would often try to engage me in conversations about our past, reminiscing about the good times we had shared. But I was no longer interested in rehashing old wounds. I was moving forward, and I needed her to understand that I had no intention of looking back. One night she caught me off guard by asking me if I'd consider counseling. "I think we owe it to ourselves to at least try," she pleaded. "I can change, Jake. I promise I'll do better." I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly reminded myself of the hurt she had caused. "Kelly, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to go back to a place where trust has been shattered." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of guilt. But I quickly pushed it aside. I couldn't allow myself to be sucked back into her web of manipulation. I had worked too hard to reclaim my life. As the emotional tug-of-war continued, I made a decision that I had been contemplating for days. I needed to create even more distance from Kelly in order to truly heal and focus on myself. I rented an apartment nearby, a fresh space that would allow me to breathe and reflect. It was time to take a leap of faith and embrace the unknown. When I finally told Kelly about my decision, her reaction was explosive. "You're just running away, Jake. You think moving out will fix everything," she screamed, her voice echoing in the small kitchen. I stood my ground, my heart pounding but my resolve unwavering. "This isn't about running away, it's about taking care of myself. I need space to figure things out, and I can't do that with you constantly trying to manipulate the situation." For the first time, she looked truly defeated. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I thought we could work it out." I felt a mix of emotions wash over me, sadness, frustration, but also a sense of relief. I knew that this was the right decision for me. I couldn't stay trapped in a relationship that had become toxic. As I moved into my new apartment, I felt a sense of liberation. The space was small but cozy, and I took the time to decorate it with things that reflected who I was: a collection of books, some artwork, and of course, my prized Audi parked right outside. I was ready for a fresh start. With every passing day, I felt stronger and more empowered. I was learning to navigate life on my own terms, free from the shadow of betrayal. I knew I still had a long way to go, but I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my identity. The road ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, my new life began to take shape. Living in the apartment provided me with a renewed sense of freedom, and I started to explore all the things I had put on hold during my marriage. I embraced my individuality and began to rediscover passions I had either neglected or allowed to fade into the background. I signed up for a cooking class, something I had always been interested in but never pursued. I also started dabbling in photography, capturing moments that resonated with me. These activities grounded me and helped me heal, allowing me to find joy in the little things. The emotional distance I had created between Kelly and me grew more pronounced. She would occasionally text me, trying to engage in small talk or longing for a casual check-in, but I kept my responses brief and polite. I was no longer interested in rekindling our connection. The more I embraced my new life, the more I realized that I didn't want to go back to the way things were. Her attempts to draw me back in felt desperate, and I finally understood that I needed to fully detach from her to move forward. One Saturday afternoon, I was out taking photos at a local park when I received a call from Kelly. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Jake, can we talk? I really need to see you," she said, her voice shaky. I could detect a sense of urgency and desperation in her tone, but I wasn't ready to let her back into my life. I knew from experience that our conversations often spiraled into a cycle of blame and manipulation. "I'm busy today, Kelly," I replied, trying to keep it short. "Can we talk later? Please just give me a chance. I promise I'll be honest." "With you," she pleaded. I paused, weighed down by the memories of our past conversations, and ultimately decided to agree. "Fine, I can meet you for coffee later." When we met, I could tell she was nervous. She fiddled with her coffee cup, her eyes darting around the cafe as if searching for the right words. I was prepared for yet another round of excuses, but I remained open to hearing what she had to say. "Jake, I've been thinking a lot about everything," she began, her voice shaky. "I know I messed up, and I realize now how much I took you for granted." I looked at her, my expression neutral, and she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I've started going to therapy. I want to understand why I made those choices. I want to change, Jake. I want to be a better person." I felt my heart race at her words. She had always been so self-absorbed, and now she was claiming to want to change. Part of me wanted to believe her. After all, change is possible, but there was still a heavy wall built between us. "That's great, Kelly. Therapy is a good step," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral even as my mind raced. "But I've also taken steps for myself. I'm not sure that we can go back to how things were." The disappointment in her eyes was palpable. "I understand that, but I want to make amends. I want to prove to you that I can be better. I want us to at least try." I shook my head. "I appreciate that you're seeking help, but it's going to take more than words to earn back my trust. I can't just jump back into a relationship that has been so damaged." She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I just want you back, Jake. I miss you." Her vulnerability tugged at something deep inside me, but I squashed it down. "I need to focus on myself right now, Kelly. I cannot be your emotional crutch anymore." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. I could feel the tension in the air, the lingering connection that had once brought us together, now tainted by her betrayal. "Please think about it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose you completely." As I watched her leave that day, something shifted within me. I realized that while I could empathize with her pain, I couldn't let it drag me back into a situation that had caused me so much hurt. I had spent months reclaiming my self-worth, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate my emotions again. In the weeks that followed, I focused even more on building my new life. I deepened my friendships, joined social clubs, and even started dating again. It felt strange at first, but I was determined not to let Kelly's betrayal define my future. I went on a few dates with different women, each of them unique in their own way. There was a woman named Sarah, an artist with a passion for travel who ignited a spark within me. I found myself laughing more, enjoying the thrill of connecting with someone new. The more I emerged into this new chapter, the more I realized how much I had been missing out on during my marriage. Yet, amidst all the excitement, Kelly continued to reach out sporadically. Each time she contacted me, I felt the urge to respond fade a little more. I learned to recognize her attempts for what they were, a desperate attempt to cling to a relationship that was already gone. I had to remind myself that I had made the right choice by moving on. But there was one last confrontation that awaited me. A few weeks after our coffee meeting, I was at a bar with friends when I spotted her across the room. She was with Tim, laughing and enjoying themselves. I felt a surge of anger followed by an unexpected wave of sadness. Seeing her with him, I realized that this was the closure I needed. I wasn't angry about her choice anymore. I was finally free. I watched them for a moment, absorbing the reality of what had been. Tim was everything I wasn't: charismatic, adventurous, and willing to cater to her every whim. But as I stood there, I knew that I wouldn't trade my journey for anything. I had fought hard to reclaim my identity, to become the person I was meant to be, and I couldn't let the shadow of my past weigh me down any longer. With that realization, I turned away from the sight, ready to embrace the future ahead of me. I had come too far to look back now. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was excited to travel it, alone yet empowered, filled with hope and the anticipation of what was to come. As the weeks rolled on, I continued to forge my path with a newfound sense of clarity and determination. The encounter with Kelly and Tim became a pivotal moment for me. I finally understood that the life I was building was worth far more than the memories of a past that had left me wounded. I had spent so much time grieving the loss of a relationship that never truly served me. Now, I was ready to embrace a fresh start. I spent my days focusing on what brought me joy and fulfillment. I cultivated friendships that uplifted me, filled my calendar with spontaneous plans, and even signed up for a citywide photography contest. Each of these experiences reinforced the fact that I was capable of living a rich, meaningful life without the weight of a toxic relationship pulling me down. One day, while I was out shooting photos of the city skyline, I met Emma, a fellow photographer who exuded positivity and warmth. We struck up a conversation, sharing our passions and interests. It felt so refreshing to connect with someone new who understood the art of capturing life's fleeting moments. As we spent time together, I found myself laughing more than I had in years. Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, and I quickly realized that she was everything I had been missing in my life. We began to date, taking our time to explore the city and each other's interests with honesty and openness. Emma was genuine and grounded, and being with her felt like a breath of fresh air. There was no pretense between us. Every moment we shared was filled with laughter and shared joy. With her, I felt safe to express myself, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Meanwhile, Kelly continued to reach out sporadically, always with the same requests to talk. I had learned to ignore her attempts, but the message she left one afternoon hit me hard. She expressed her deep regrets about her actions and how much she had changed. "I've realized I never appreciated you," she admitted. "I'm so sorry for everything, Jake. I just wish I could take it all back." I felt torn as I listened to her words. Part of me wanted to feel compassion for her, to acknowledge her pain and growth, but I had to remind myself that words alone wouldn't erase the past. I had already moved on, and continuing to engage with her would only drag me back into the cycle of hurt I was trying so hard to escape. That evening, I picked up the phone and decided to respond one last time. I texted her, "I appreciate your honesty, Kelly, but I'm not the same person you once knew. I need to focus on my own happiness now. I hope you find what you're looking for." Sending that message felt like closing a chapter I had long struggled to finish. I didn't need to carry the weight of her expectations or guilt any longer. I was finally free to live my life fully and authentically, without the shadow of our past looming over me. As Emma and I grew closer, I found myself sharing my experiences with her. I opened up about my past relationship, the pain of betrayal, and the journey of self-discovery I had embarked upon. Emma listened with empathy and understanding, never judging me for my past. Instead, she celebrated my strength and resilience, encouraging me to embrace the person I had become. One evening, as we sat on a rooftop overlooking the city, I took a deep breath and turned to her. "I want you to know how much you mean to me," I said, feeling my heart swell. "You've brought light back into my life, and I'm grateful every day for it." She smiled, her eyes sparkling under the city lights. "I feel the same way, Jake. You've shown me that it's possible to grow from the past and build something beautiful in the present." In that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had learned that life doesn't always go as planned, and sometimes the most painful endings can lead to the most beautiful beginnings. I had reclaimed my self-worth, learned to let go of resentment, and opened my heart to new possibilities. As I embraced this new chapter, I reflected on how much I had grown. The betrayal I once thought would destroy me had become a catalyst for my transformation. I had learned to prioritize my happiness and surround myself with people who uplifted and inspired me. The road ahead was still unknown, but I was ready for whatever it held. I had found strength in vulnerability, clarity in chaos, and the ability to embrace change. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely excited about the future, ready to forge my own path without fear or hesitation. Each day was a new opportunity to create a life that was uniquely mine, free from the shadows of the past. I was finally living for myself, and that made all the difference.